thing that surprised me most was that the Queen was protecting Andrew. Every time people brought complaints to her, she sent them away, including complaints not just from senior diplomats, but also people from the intelligence services.
Prince Andrew's world collapsed in the cold light of a revelation he never saw coming. The phone call came late at night, piercing through the quiet of the palace like a gunshot. King Charles's voice was steady, but behind it lay a weight that Andrew couldn't ignore. "It's all coming out," Charles said. "Everything the public doesn't know, every shadow you've hidden in, I have to tell them." Andrew's hand shook as he pressed the receiver to his ear, the silence that followed almost unbearable. The palace corridors, normally a sanctuary of history and tradition, felt suffocating. Every portrait seemed to stare at him, the painted eyes judging, accusing. He staggered into the drawing room, the cold marble floors biting through his socks, and for the first time in decades, the reality hit him. He was alone. Not a soul could save him now. Outside, the world was oblivious, living in mundane routines, but inside, secrets roared like a storm. The late Queen had protected him, shielded him from truths that now clawed their way to the surface. Every meeting, every hush-hush conversation, every discreet intervention, it had all been part of a delicate, dangerous web. And King Charles was about to unravel it. Andrew remembered the Queen's calm, steady demeanor, the way she would offer a reassuring smile in public while masking the storms behind palace doors. She had always been untouchable. And now, she was gone. Her absence left him exposed, vulnerable. The thought made him recoil in fear. What would the world say when they discovered what she had done to protect him? A knock at the door startled him. His heart leapt into his throat. It was only a footman, holding a letter with the royal seal. Andrew's hands trembled as he tore it open. Inside, a single sentence made him freeze. "The truth is no longer yours to control." The words were simple, but the weight behind them was crushing. He paced the room, trying to think, trying to breathe, but his mind was a storm of terror and betrayal. Every corner of his life, every carefully curated public image was about to be shredded. And yet the worst part wasn't just the exposure. It was the knowledge that King Charles would reveal not just his actions, but the Queen's decisions to protect him. The revelation would humiliate the monarchy in ways no one had ever imagined. The phone rang again. He flinched. It was Charles. "I want the public to understand everything," he said quietly. "No one will be spared the truth." Andrew's stomach dropped. Every secret, every hidden favor, every shadowed deal. The Queen had kept it all under wraps. But now the shield was gone. Andrew felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes, tears of fear, of anger, of desperation. Suddenly the door to the room creaked. Andrew spun around, his pulse racing. He was certain someone had entered. The hallway outside was empty. He wasn't safe anywhere, not in the palace, not even in the familiar halls he had walked 1,000 times. The walls themselves seemed to close in, suffocating him. The tapes, the letters, the whispered arrangements, all of it could come to light at any second. A thought struck him like a punch. What if Charles had allies in the press? What if every confidential conversation, every private memo, every secret meeting he had relied on for years could be leaked tomorrow? Panic surged, raw and unrelenting. He stumbled toward the window and looked out at the dark London skyline. The city was calm, indifferent. But in his mind, the world was burning. The call ended abruptly. Silence engulfed him. For the first time, Andrew felt the crushing weight of reality. The Queen had covered for him, yes, but that cover had been fragile, and now it was gone. The weight of exposure pressed down on him like a physical force. His reputation, his freedom, everything he had known, all teetered on the brink. Suddenly, a soft knock broke the stillness. Andrew's heart jumped again. Not the footman this time. Someone else. A shadow in the doorway. "Andrew," the voice said, trembling slightly. "They know everything. They're coming for the story." He froze, every nerve screaming in panic. This was no longer just about public opinion. This was personal. This was raw, unrelenting terror.
Andrew's knees buckled as the shadow stepped fully into the room. It was not a stranger. He recognized the sharp, haunted face of one of the Queen's most trusted aides, a woman who had served the monarchy for decades. "They know," she repeated, her voice low, almost breaking. "The journalists, the cameras, they've been tipped off. Everything." Andrew's chest tightened. His mind raced with 1,000 impossible scenarios, names, dates, whispered agreements, all of it. The Queen's protective shield over him had kept these secrets buried, and now, like a dam cracking under relentless pressure, the walls of his carefully curated life threatened to collapse. "They're planning a full exposé," she said, glancing at the ornate clock. Its ticking sounded deafening in the heavy silence. "Tonight, they have sources, they have documents, they have—" Her voice faltered, but the meaning was clear. Every hidden meeting, every discreet intervention by the Queen, every cover-up that had kept scandal at bay, they were about to be dragged into the light. Andrew felt bile rise in his throat. He stumbled toward the fireplace, clutching the mantle as though it could anchor him to reality. "No," he croaked. "They can't. This can't happen. Not tonight." But even as he spoke, he knew he was powerless. The palace, the very symbol of security and heritage, had become a trap. Each corridor he had once walked confidently now seemed like a labyrinth of judgment and betrayal. The aide pulled out a small tablet, its screen glowing in the dim light. On it were images, documents, excerpts from letters that had been kept secret for decades. Andrew's eyes widened in disbelief. Every file, every note bore the unmistakable imprint of the Queen herself. She had orchestrated cover-ups with precision, and now all of it could be weaponized against him. A sudden noise outside the window drew his attention. The city was alive with movement, headlights glinting in the distance, but Andrew felt no relief. He felt hunted. Every flash of light, every distant siren, every shadow moving along the streets below seemed like a warning. They were coming for him, and there was no escape. "Charles, he's behind this, isn't he?" Andrew's voice shook. Fear and disbelief tangled with anger. "He's using her death as a weapon against me." The aide didn't answer immediately. Her silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, she said, "He believes the truth must be told. He believes no one is above it. And right now, Andrew, that includes you." Andrew's mind reeled. Memories of the Queen's protective hand flashed before him. Every time a scandal threatened to surface, she had intervened. Every whisper of wrongdoing had been contained by her influence. And now, without her, the palace was no longer a refuge. It was a courtroom, a battleground, a trap that tightened with every passing second. A soft, distant knock echoed through the halls. Andrew's heart skipped. Not the aide this time. Someone else, and closer. Someone moving through the shadows. His pulse throbbed painfully, his breath shallow. Every instinct screamed that the walls were closing in, that at any moment exposure would be absolute. He darted to the nearest corridor, peering into the darkness. No one. But the feeling of being watched was suffocating. The Queen's absence had left a void, and in that void he could sense danger lurking everywhere. Every step he took felt amplified. Every creak of the floorboards a signal that the world outside the palace was ready to pounce. The aide's voice cut through his panic. "Andrew, you need to decide. Hide, fight, confess. It doesn't matter. By the time you choose, the cameras, the reporters, they'll already be at the gates. The kingdom will know." Andrew's hands shook as he pressed them to his face. Panic clawed at his throat. The Queen had protected him from consequences before, but now the king was unrelenting. There was no protector left. No one would intervene. No one would pause the tide that was rising, ready to engulf him entirely. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the palace fell silent again. Too silent. Andrew's fear twisted into anticipation. Knowing that the storm outside was only gathering strength, ready to strike, the first wave of exposure was imminent. This segment ends with Andrew completely cornered, with exposure unavoidable, the tension at a peak.
The palace gates were no longer just gates. They were barricades holding back an army. Andrew's heart raced as he peered through the heavy drapes, watching a sea of cameras flash, reporters shouting questions that he couldn't hear but could feel in every nerve of his body. The world outside was awake, hungry, merciless. Every second felt like an eternity, each one bringing the inevitable closer. He could hear the faint hum of helicopters, distant sirens, the shuffle of feet against stone pathways. His pulse hammered in his ears. He was trapped inside a gilded cage, each ornate wall a reminder of the Queen's absence, each chandelier casting shadows that seemed to whisper accusations. There would be no mercy. There would be no secrets left untouched. Suddenly, the aide stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. They have the documents. They have witnesses. They're already circulating information to major networks. This isn't a warning. This is happening. Andrew pressed his hands to his face. The weight of it was unbearable. For decades, he had believed that influence, family, and discretion could shield him.